Hello, you sexy bastards, and welcome to another edition of the Am and View podcast with myself, Liam Innes, my co-host Jake Pointer,
hello,
and expert panelist Thomas Fro, Owen Innes, and Mr. Stephen Povey.
hello there.
As per, we are brought to you in association with After Extra Time Shirts, so why not jump over to their Twitter page, that's at AET Shirts, for some great content and links to lovely merchandise.
This week we'll reflect quickly on Livingston's dreadful Dundee display. We'll also have our first session in Cherif Court as we discuss the place of two current Livingston stars in the team at the minute.
Our guest this week is former Youth Academy graduate and Lock Gilthead's most famous son, Cammy MacDonald, as he opens up about his time with Livingston during the club's most turbulent era, as well as playing with future Scotland stars and telling us all about those pesky Livi GS nights out.
And finally, we look back at our favourite moments in games over the years against Saturday's opponents, St Midden. So why not run yourself a bath, grab yourself a crisp Chardonnay, light some candles, and enjoy all the delights we have to offer regarding professional football in West Lothian with us here at the Am and View podcast. I feel like you're inside me. I can't believe I'm saying this, but Saturday afternoon, seeing Livingston lose again. It's like buses, Zoe. You wait ages for one and two bloody arrive at the same time, am I right? What's life? Livi fell 3-0 at Tannadice against Dundeh United, and I won't lie, that hit my soul in half. Povey, what are your thoughts on the game?
Well, what a start to the game that was, wasn't it? It was over before it even started. But really unenjoyable. Mental red cards. I'm sure you guys will pick up on that. I don't know. I don't want to be depressed, but my goodness, it was a tanking. Over in the first minute. As I say, I really don't know what to say. I think it was weird. Some of the performances, like Devlin, for me, who's usually amazing, he was making so much room for the Dundee United attacks. I don't know, it was just a letdown. I was disappointed when Robbo, obviously, I hope he's not injured for a while, but it's not looking good. And see, when Jet went on, I was just like, oh, man. I knew we weren't going to win at that point or get anything. Even with that little bit of hope when they got a red card, we just didn't cut it. But no wonder when Jet was on. More about him later.
So true. Owen, what did you think?
Yeah. I'm going to just come out and say it. I think that's the worst performance that we've had since the Stranraer playoff games. Genuinely, it was horrible. It was such a poor performance from such a good team. There's like two players that I could pick out that played well. One of them was Jason Holt. I thought he tried to pick up the ball. Do you know, Jason Holt reminds me a lot of, obviously he's maybe a bit older, maybe even the same age as Stefan Skugel. Like when we had John Hughes as manager, Stefan Skugel would always come deep, pick up the ball, and that's exactly what Holt was doing. Holt was trying to create everything. However, I'm also gonna do a bit of shithousery here as well. That pitch was fucking awful as well. That pitch wasn't even fit for growing tatties on. So for what we were trying to do, you could clearly see the way that we were trying to get into the game, but there wasn't a single player who had pass marks. And to be honest, with Fitzwater being sent off, despite the fact that was never a red card, even with him being sent off, it wouldn't have changed much. It probably does us a bit of a favour, in all honesty. I thought he was terrible. But anyway, there's not very many positives to pick up. I think Jace Kabaya tried. I forgot to mention him last week against St Johnstone. He came on and he played very, very well. So, but yeah, it was just really, really flat. We didn't look like the team that we were 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was just awful. And when you don't have a striker who can actually get into the right positions, it's always going to go bad against you. So just awful.
Thomas, any positivity your way?
No. Yeah, again, disappointing game. I'm going to deflect though. I'm going to deflect the disappointment and touch a bit more on the state of the park and the refereeing. Honestly, as Owen mentioned, the park was atrocious. When people slag us off for having a plastic pitch, they think that is better. It boggles my mind because that just isn't good enough. I think I've played on Sunday League parks that are better than that. You could tell the ball wasn't moving properly. Yeah. It was holding up so much, and it probably had a say in a couple of the cards. Just the players were just half a yard off it, and the refereeing decisions. I mean, I wasn't overly convinced with their red card, to be honest. I was like, good because that gave us an opportunity to get back into the game. Yeah. Not going to complain, but we just didn't grasp it. Didn't grasp that opportunity, and it's really disappointing on a team that works so hard. But maybe the park played a big part in that. So I'll deflect with that. And then our red card was never a red. I mean, come on, it reeked of evening things up.
Totally.
I just thought it was a terrible decision. And then when you've got Jet missing his chance and just us not clicking, just disappointing all round.
Aye. So Liam, make us happy.
Jackson Longridge didn't play. I think that's pretty much the only positive I can come up with. I don't know. Like, yeah, pretty much just touching on what everyone said. Just every single one of them had an off day. Jason Holt was the only one that looked like he was interested at some point. I mean, when you go 1-0 down, like after 50 seconds or whatever it was, it's always going to be hard to come back, and like you need to be at it. Like, and then when they got the red card, the attitude of the players just made it seem as if like, oh, they're down to 10 men now, so of course we're going to get back into it. Like, there didn't really seem to be any, like, the attitude from me looking on looked more sort of like, this is a foregone conclusion than we've got an opportunity here. Yeah, and I mean, the refereeing decisions, Thomas was spot on. It was that Fitzwater one. You can tell it was just evening it up because it took him about 2 minutes to make the decision. Like, he blew for the free kick, started walking away, and then thought, oh, fuck, actually, do you know what? I've got an opportunity here to try and pass this off as a red, and it just wasn't. Yeah, Guthrie, I thought Guthrie was worse than Fitzwater. I thought Fitzwater was... Yeah, I mean, the first goal was so bad from him and Devlin, and just the whole team. It was again another off day. Hopefully it won't last. At least last week we scored and sort of showed a wee bit of fight. This week, like, there was nothing to suggest that we were going to sort of turn it around at all.
Bovey?
I just thinking, you're saying about evening it up. It wasn't even when they were still all over us when we had an extra man. It was hardly evening it up. It was just making it worse.
That was the thing that got me. It was just like, we had no... I mean, obviously teams are more compact, right, when they're playing with 10 men usually. But they went up and fucking broke. They split our defence in half for their second goal, like wild. Almost immediately.
But talking of that second goal, I'm going to throw it out there because I know you are saying Holt like had a good game or whatever, but that blip. I mean, I'm defending Jet here. He passed it quite. Like, Holt should have got that pass from Jet, and he gave it away. And that was you knew straight away as soon as they attacked from that interception that they were going to score. To be honest, I'm amazed it wasn't more. It was pants.
So it's hard to kind of say stuff that you've not said already, but I'm actually going to be quite positive and say I disagree with the whole was that good. I think Craig Sibbald was our best player.
Oh God,
because the guy just runs and puts so much effort in. He was the only guy in that park, and it's funny that he got taken. I think he was taken, apart from obviously Robo, I think he was taken off first. Maybe for was it for Kabaya? I'm not sure. Anyway, I thought he was the best player, just because he just put so much effort in, and I thought that's the kind of, if everyone kind of put, took a leaf out of his book, it would have been better. So that's my only positivity, that Craig Sibbald is still having an incredible season. And generally, I'll say it on the podcast, I've said this before, I would have him and Holt starting in the centre mid over Holt and Bartley, because I think Sibbald is brilliant.
Order! Oh, hey. Welcome to Cherif Court, your new favourite feature on the Almond View podcast, where the boys have 50 seconds each to argue their case before a judge rules who is the deserving winner. This is a completely original idea and not ripped from the TV programme A View from the Terrace. Why would you even say that? Who the fuck do you think you are? Fuck off. This week in Cherif Court, we are arguing the cases for and against two current Livingston stars, Robbie McCrorie and J. Emmanuel Thomas. Liam will argue why Robbie McCrorie deserves his place back in the team, and Jake will argue why he should be kept warming the bench. Then after that, Thomas will argue why Jet requires a starting place to get off the runway, and Povey will argue why he should be placed in the hangar along with Concord. Owen will be timekeeping and giving his final verdict after each argument. Owen, are you ready?
Ready.
Jake, are you ready?
Ready!
Owen, give us the countdown.
3, 2, 1.
Okay, I will say this in general. I don't think goalkeepers get very good until they turn about 30. But McCrorie, I think his decision-making, not very good. If the ball gets put through, he doesn't know whether to come or not. I feel like when crosses come into the box, I wouldn't say he's very confident with that. He also had that absolute howler against Kelly. I think Kelly, hopefully it's Kelly. He also, his positioning in goal, especially when we played Celtic and we were 2-1 up and Celtic scored in the last minute, I felt it could have been a bit over. Mainly through lack of experience, but might as well say it because I'm running out of things to say. He's a prick. Never liked him. Just in general, I don't think they have much as confidence with him. I don't think the defenders have much confidence in him. And I believe Big Max should be picked all day long, baby.
Liam, are you ready?
Indeed I am.
Excellent. 3, 2, 1.
Everything you just said about Robbie McCrorie is wrong. He is an established keeper in the Championship. He's worked his way through the divisions to be an excellent Premiership goalkeeper, in my opinion. Fair enough, he had a pretty sticky spell at the start of the season. That game against Kilmarnock, everyone wants to forget it. But that recent 2-2 draw with Celtic at Almondvale, I thought he was excellent. Everything that came his way, the ball was like a magnet in his hands. His kicking was excellent. He's got that sort of modern day mix of a goalkeeper, knows how to play it out from the back if he needs to, also can kick it long. I think he's a goal scoring sensation eventually. One day he'll get a goal. And yeah, I just think you're wrong. Robbie McCrorie, you're my man.
Wow.
Brilliant.
Superb.
Owen, can you give us your verdict on those arguments, please?
I usually don't sit on the fence about certain players. I'm not a big fan of Robbie McCrorie's. However, if I had to choose a winner between those two arguments, I think you might know where this is going. I'm afraid to say that it might be time for Robbie McCrorie to have another wee shot in between the sticks. So I'm going to announce that Liam is the winner.
Oh,
get it
fucking
well done.
So the starting lineup for next week should read number 1, Robbie McCrorie in goals.
So there you have it. Robbie McCrorie should be back in the Livingston lineup. Up next, we're going to discuss J. Emmanuel Thomas. Now, Thomas Fro will be discussing that Jay should have his place in the team and in the starting 11. And Povey, as you could probably already tell from the start of the podcast, will be arguing why J. Emmanuel Thomas should never play for the club again. Thomas, are you ready?
Ready.
Give us the countdown, Mr. Countdown Man.
3, 2, 1.
So I've prepared a 5-point attack sharper than the notorious JET in the penalty box to approach this with. So, number 1, he's a cultured and an experienced player. Arsenal youth, pedigree. He's went to play in England, Wales, Scotland and Thailand. when he played for the fantastically named Petroleum Authority of Thailand Rayong Football Club. What a name. Can he beat that? He's a utility man. In his career, he's played at left wing, striker and left back, where he showed a defensive masterclass against Celtic. He is Livingston's John O'Shea. Media stardom. He's been on Soccer AM Soccer Box. You just can't beat that. Stats. He's scored a goal every 279 minutes of being on the park, compared to Scott Robinson, who's only scored every 293 minutes in the park. So obviously, he deserves his place.
Fair play. That was so good.
Oh boy. A compelling argument from Thomas Froh there regarding Jet. Now it's the turn of the big man. Mr. Stephen Povey, are you ready?
Oh, hell yeah.
Mr. Countdown Man, give us the countdown.
3, 2, 1.
He stands about, he's out of place, his effort is a total disgrace. If Scott Robbo is a wasp, then Jet's a slug. If you think, oh, he's a utility man, then you're a mug. John O'Shea, more like John Fuck Yeah. He can't header, he can't jump, he thinks he's class, but he's just a lump. On Jet's Instagram, he posts chocolates and sweets. No wonder all the goalies get clean sheets. Even Kelly, when he scored that goal, he was standing about, just fucking hit the ball. And then there's the keeper, absolutely chucked it. Tam, you might say he scored all the goals, but in this argument, you fucked it.
My word.
Oh my God.
You still got 10 seconds left, son.
I think
That's
I know
amazing.
what the answer will be, but Owen, can you give your final judgment on J. Emmanuel Thomas, please?
I think I most certainly can. I've not sat on the fence about J. Emmanuel Thomas much either, but this time, Thomas, I'm afraid you've not convinced me. J. Emmanuel Thomas, get back in your hangar. You can take a seat on Concorde, but make sure it's an economy one.
Yes.
Fair play. Excellent arguments, boys. That concludes Cherif Court.
This week, we are thrilled to say we are joined by tough tackling, third division winning Italian storytelling maestro, Cammy MacDonald.
How you doing?
Hey.
How you doing, Cammy? All right?
Yes, I'm well. Yes, yeah, excited to be on and share some of the stories with you.
So let's just get into it. So you're from Gilphead, well, your most famous son from Gilphead, despite it not saying so in Wikipedia. How did the move from there to Livingston happen?
Well, as Povey can tell you, Gilphead is quite a wonderful part of the country.
Hell yeah.
Not exactly well known for producing football players, right enough. There's an amateur men's team here that have been going for a long time, a number of years, that Red Star. And there's a youth Gilphead soccer centre that had been, I think that was established not too long after I was born. So it was kind of in its early stages when I started playing in it, and it's the usual for this neck of the woods with just parents coaching, helping out. It's, if their kids playing, they coach. I went to every summer we went down to Campbelltown, even further away from kind of Glasgow and that. We went down to play in a big football festival, and I think there's a picture of Andy Robertson floating around playing in it from his younger days as well. So it was quite a well-known festival back in its day. But it was kind of just local playing around here. Getting coached by parents who were giving up their time versus actual well-educated coaches. Mm-hmm. There was a football camp, I think it was an Easter camp, one time that I played in, and it was Scott Allison who was coaching it. He was doing community coaching back then, and Scott's gone on to have a fantastic coaching career. He's been in with Rangers. I met him again at Livingston, and I think he's with Partick Thistle now. So much as I was starting out my playing journey, he was starting out his coaching journey. I played one game for my high school here that doesn't really have a football team. In fact, it didn't have when I was playing. And for some reason, this game against Oban, our kind of rival school, if you like, was organised, and I'm fairly certain it was just a friendly match. But they came down to play us on a blaze park with the gravel, the old stones. They came down to play us one day, and their best player, his dad was down watching, he was a kind of attacking midfielder, a stocky guy. And I mean, I was younger-ish for the high school, but it was probably, I must have been a standout player for our side, because again, there's just not that many players really in our neck of the woods. His dad spoke to my dad and said, listen, my son plays up in Paisley for a team, a boys club team, you know, your son should be up playing. Do you want to come along? So I says, aye, okay. Went up, trialled with St Peter's Boys Club in Paisley, who played at the racecourse parks. And they took me on right away and said, well, two of you from that area is better than one. You can alternate the driving and whatnot between your parents. So I played I think it was a season and a half or 2 seasons with them. I played actually half a season as a striker for them. I was wearing remember those Vapors, the boots?
Yeah.
Fellas.
Amazing.
Aye, so you can imagine me as a cultured forward, you know, but I was playing there. We entered the Scottish Cup and we're playing teams. I can't remember. It's the Juventus team from through in the East that played in the Juventus strips. I can't remember their proper title. But we played a couple of teams like that. And I got invited in to Livi to come and train with the 15s and played a couple of sessions, couple of games with them. And from that, it was a no-brainer. I just progressed right the way through.
So you were a part of a great youth team that won loads of trophies. What was the youth setup compared to like a boys club, and were you actually full-time at this point?
I had a very unique path because being from Lochgilphead and being involved with the under-15s at Livi, it wasn't feasible to travel back and forth a couple of times a week. We tried it for a few months and it was just a joke. You obviously can't drive, you know, and it was my dad that was running me back and forth. So you can imagine being out in the graft all day, you know, running a business and then whipping your son 2.5, 3 hours, and it was, you know, through bottleneck traffic in Glasgow as well to get to training. So it was but it was also getting to the stage where I needed 3-4 sessions a week to improve at the level and the rate that others were. Mm-hmm. So when I moved from the 15s into the 17s, which still aren't full time, they're just a couple of nights a week, we had to make the decision, well, I can't do that, do my schooling from Lochgilphead and be part of that under-17 team. Mm-hmm. So my dad basically booted me out of the house and said, I'm sending you to Glasgow. So no word of a lie. They took on a flat in the middle of Glasgow and said, we're going to put you in. There's another woman staying in there, one of like my dad's business associates' nieces, who was a little bit older, and fortunately was able to help kind of guide us a little bit in terms of like how you cook, how you clean, how you take care of yourself, how you top up electricity meters. Yeah. Bear in mind, I was still 15 at this point, and I was like, this is great. It's no student housing, you're straight into a flat in the middle of Glasgow.
Yeah.
Enrolled in Cardonald College to do my hires, and then I was getting the minibus with Scott Allison through to Livi 3 times a week in the night. So I'd get up, sort myself out, walk 25 minutes to the college, do my classes, mess about at Nethercraigs, which is a big AstroTurf park down there, walk back to the flat, get changed, eat something, jump on the train into the city centre of Glasgow, walk down to Bridge Street subway and get picked up by all these Glasgow boys in the minibus and get taken to training. And then the same thing on the way back, dropped off at Bridge Street, walk up, get the bus or the train back to Cardonald and back into the flat for about midnight, and then back up to college the next morning. So, you know, it was just something you did. You just did it. And you never really thought of it. You were just living in the moment. There was no broadband or nothing either. So you're stuck with, you know, I think I had a hard drive with about 400 pirated TV series or something that you ended up watching.
TV series.
Bearing in mind I was 15. So, you know, but that's how it was. It was kind of like a boot camp. You're too young to drink. You couldn't be going out. You know, I look, you know, 40, not 30, you know, but you can't, even back then, they weren't letting you in without ID, so you couldn't go out on nights out, you couldn't go and do anything like that, you weren't driving. But I think it was really good, and, you know, I look back on it, I'm like, a young age to be thrust into that, but it kind of makes you as a person, because you looked at the guys you were playing with who were still living at home and had older siblings around them, younger siblings. They were in high school, still getting treated like kids, real kids, whereas you've been thrust into this environment of, well, sink or swim, really.
So moving on, in 2007, 2008, you made your debut at age 19 in a 6-1 home win against Morton. So when did you find out you were playing, and what were your pre-match nerves like and stuff?
It was quite strange. I remember the youth team that I was part of were flying out, and I was scheduled to fly out to Cyprus for a training camp or a tournament. We used to go out and do that quite often, and I was all set to be a part of that. And then I got a phone. I was back in Lochilphead over Christmas because we had a bit of time off. The first team had been training, but I was allowed to go back for time off because I was going to Cyprus. Had my bags packed and everything, and then I got a phone call out of the blue saying, "You're not going to Cyprus. We need you in the squad for the first team." So part of me was like chuffed that I was going to be with the first team, but it also felt like my mates are away out for a month in the sun. I'm getting kept back as a skivvy to do all the under-19s jobs, the boot cleaning and all this stuff while they're away, and to sit in the stand pretty much. So I was like, right, fine, I better get some training under my belt. Got a couple of days of running in Lochilphead, went back up to Livi and went in to do a training session. And I think the first team had played the night before because it was like the bomb squad training the next day. So there was only about 7 or 8 of us. I remember it. I can't remember if it was at Muriston, but it was pouring down with rain. It was horrendous. You know, the guys you're training with don't want to be there because they've not been playing. But then it was Craig Flanagan, who was most recently with Rangers, I think, but I don't know if he's still there. He pulled me aside and says, "You're starting on Saturday." And I was like, "Are you, what?" I was like, "I've not even made appearances off the bench properly yet, apart for pre-season." He's like, "You're starting. You're in at the start on Saturday." And I think the team had a rough run of results as well, and wasn't it? I was like, brilliant. So, but I went in and 6-1 win. You'd never pictured that. You couldn't ask for better, really.
So we actually looked to the team for that day. So you're playing alongside Graham Dorrans, Robert Snodgrass, Lee Griffiths, Dave Mackay, and of course our Amon View favourite Colin McMenamin. However, you end up getting man of the match, which is absolute class, what I said. So how long was that your chat line for?
Do you know something? I didn't actually know I got man of the match. I forgot that. I forgot that fact, but I guess it's one of the easy ones, isn't it? Give it to the debutant, a young kid that's come in.
Oh, don't put it down, man. Don't put it down.
Again, young. Sometimes I look now and I envy the young guys that are 16, 17, 18, not just footballers, but you are kind of fearless at that age, aren't you? You don't really care. You could get put in against Champions League team and you're just like, I'll do it. I'll manage it. It's great. Give me it. You want that. I think, is it Joey Barton recently talked about when he was playing and he burst into the youth team changing room and was saying to the young guys, like, you need to want my jersey to come and play, and that's the ones that want that bad enough will end up getting it. So I was just delighted to be in and be playing. But if I remember correctly, I think it was 6-0 that game up until like the last minute, and then they got a dodgy penalty. I think it was James McPake or Desi McCaffrey or somebody like that for like the ball flicked up off their hand or something. So I was more raging that it was going to be 6-0, and I was like, right, that's tremendous.
Yeah.
And they nicked one at the end. So
just a wee bit on the guys we mentioned there before. I mean, some amazing players. Was there anyone that you particularly, saw at that time and thought, oh my God, they are going to be amazing? Or do you kind of feel like they deserved the fame that they've got from being so good?
Aye, well, I mean, all of the boys that have gone on and done really well, have deserved it. I got on all well with all of them. Snoddy, you could see had real ability. He's such a powerful guy as well. And you just knew that when things clicked for him, he would be moving up. Dorrans as well he was much more subtle as a player. Snoddy's really loud and outgoing, and everybody knows he's a joker. Whereas Graham was much more reserved and calm and cautious, but in terms of footballer, he was excellent, absolutely excellent. And Dave Mackay, he was just Mr. like Steady Eddie,
Mm-hmm.
Like you put him in your team every day of the week. You just knew what you were going to get out of him. He was a right back, and his job was to defend, and that's what he did. He did that, and then anything he gave you going forward was a bonus. So, and then Jazza, even playing with him, he was still younger at that stage, and he went on and done really well, but he was lightning quick.
Mm-hmm.
So I had the comfort of knowing that well, if I miss something or mistime something or miss it here, I've got a guy that's rapid next to me to help recover it. So
did you get any pranks pulled on you by Snoddy?
not long after that game I did. To be fair, I don't think I was victim of too many of his ones. I enjoyed watching him with the pranks, and he's had a few crackers and there's loads of stories going about him, but he got me, once I played that game against Morton, I played the next two was like a midweek cup game and then another league game, and I'd played all three, and I think we won either 1-2 and drew one, or we won all three. And the courier phones, the record phones, there was a couple of like the papers, because you've come in, Livi were in a bit of turmoil, you come in as a young kid, the results turn, so they phone you and just want a wee interview.
Mm-hmm.
So this guy phones me as well, and I'd been told by the managers that to expect a few phone calls. Anyway, so this one before training one morning, and it's a guy saying, "You've done really, really well, really well." And then he starts with, "So we've heard there's been some interest in you from other clubs." And I says, I don't know, that's the first I've heard of it. And he's like, aye, we've heard like Liverpool were up watching you. And I can't remember, like, I don't know if he said Chelsea or something, like another team. Nothing like, I think he maybe threw a team in that was a bit more like realistic, like a League One team or something like that, to make it a bit more believable.
Uh-huh.
And I kept giving it the responses that you're kind of programmed to give, didn't give it in a way apart from, you just got to keep playing, keep your head down, and all the rest of it. But full on walking straight into this fake interview. And it was before training. I was like, right, fine. And I've walked into the changing room, and as I'm walking round, like they're all gathered round this phone on speaker, and I've just heard my voice. I was like, no. But you just wanted the ground to open up, but you realise you're not the only one. You've done that as a Snoddy regular to loads of different people. So
it could have been worse though. You could have been like, "Oh yeah, no, I've heard."
Liverpool
won, mate. At least you played.
I think a few boys dove right into that one, but I'm glad my responses were a bit more, a bit more reserved.
Right, we got to the main course now. In the summer of 2008, the club was taken over. Please tell us everything.
It was one of those strange situations, and I might not get every detail right, but I remember I'd gone away that summer and come back to Lochilphead for the most part, fairly chuffed. And again, Proc and Curtis were still in charge and had given me a list of things to kind of improve on over the summer and work on. And I was buzzing. I was like, well, I'm going to be part of their first team plans if I work on these things. So I've gone away and burst my gut with that, and then obviously the news breaks and the messages start circling, and you read the papers and find out that it's all changed. Ownership's changed, managers changed. These Italians have taken over, coming in, and everyone's kind of like, right, what's going on here? And I think it was kind of like people joke that the players are the last to know, but typically they are. The papers know everything, everybody else, all the directors and everything is all informed first, and then finally we get like a message saying, this is what's happening, please report on this date. So I remember we reported for training and our pre-season, and they had the room set up as like a interview room basically, and they had you come in one by one in front of a table of 5 Italians sitting there in suits, and you sat down and you had to introduce yourself, and they said who they were, and you had to say like about you, where you're from, how good you were and all the rest of it. And I think they even asked you like how much money you were going to be worth and whatnot at the time. And that's what they're saying. They said, so you see yourself playing what level for how much money? And you're like, what is this all about? And then you kind of get alarm bells ringing right from that stage. But it started off great. And it's like anything in the world of football, absolutely anything. I'll maintain this, that it does not matter what's going on at a club. See if the results are going well. It papers over absolutely everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also, equally true that if the results are going really bad, it could be the best run club in the world and there could be so many things to be positive about. But if the results aren't happening, that's literally all that matters, and it's a results business. So the Italians kind of got away with it for a while because they did, they assembled an all right team, and we started the season well, really well. So everybody's like, right, things are going swimmingly here. No, I'm not going to look too far past the fact that the team's doing well. But anybody that was, I'm sure there was probably some skeptics at the time, but again, they're getting overshadowed by everybody saying, nah, it's going well, it's going really well. So they took us to the Ramada Jarvis for pre-season for a month.
Yes.
They told us, I think, and again, because of the accent and, you know, their understanding of English, what it was perceived that we were going in a pre-season camp, a training camp in a hotel. So of course you're starting to think like maybe like abroad somewhere, Spain or Austria or somewhere, you know, like away for a month to do a boot camp. And then they says, no, you're going up to the hotel. And even then we're like, right, well, okay, we can probably deal with that. And again, for me, because I was a young guy, you just take all this in your stride. It doesn't bother you. But looking back now, I can see that for the guys that were older at that time who had families, they're sitting scratching their heads saying, what's going on here? He says, you need to eat with us. So we had breakfast in the hotel. We'd go and train. We'd have lunch at the stadium, go and train, dinner at the hotel or the stadium, and then we'd stay over. And I was like, these guys aren't getting to go and spend time with their families. So some of them were cracking up, because you can imagine with 2 or 3 kids, you know, you're 10 minutes, half an hour, some of them along the road, trying to explain that you can't go and see your kids. So, but they're like, no, this is a boot camp. So that pissed off a lot of the more experienced players. Then they decided they wanted to switch training to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, because it was more game realistic. Your body would be in tune with working hard at 3 o'clock. Which, you can see the theory behind it, and I'm sure that's what happens in some, like maybe it does happen in Italy, and then there's probably some science to back it up. But you were telling this to veterans of the game that this was like their 17th pre-season. You show up, you train in the morning, you do your hard work, and you go home and see your family. Like, and they were trying to get used to this. So crossed wires is probably the best way of putting it. But the time in the hotel was chaotic. I remember like Lee Griffiths doesn't do well with that type of thing, and went AWOL for a couple of days. Just never showed up, and obviously they couldn't contact him. But you know, it's like dealing with, I don't know, like a delicate thing. You know, you don't want to do. You got to be really careful how you handle it. You know, if you turn around and discipline it to the fullest extent, you never see it again. So he kind of got away with it. And I remember when he came back to the hotel, we had thought, how can we welcome him back? And we went into his room. I think he was rooming with Liam Fox. Like, used a screwdriver and whatnot to take apart his bed, his mattress, his bed, and all the furniture that was in his side of Fox's room, and put it into the main hallway, the lobby of the hotel.
Oh, what?
So he's walked in with his tail between his legs, I think, you know, like, I'm back after the couple of days away. He's basically take one look at that and he's like, no, I'm not having this, and walked right out again for another couple of days. So, of course, the manager and all that are racking their brains. They've just had this heart-to-heart with him about, you know, we see a big plan for you and all the rest of it. And he's like, right, so he's gone back to the hotel, and then 10 minutes later, they're like, where's Sparky? Like, we don't know. He's away. It's him away again.
Sorry, what was the Italian manager, Roberto's son, always wore it. He always had a baseball cap on. See, in terms of like training and stuff like that, was training any good under him, or was he just a bit of a weird
it was
one?
all right. He was fine. I don't think anybody. You ask the players, I don't think any of them had a problem with him. He was a genuine enough guy. And it's like anybody, you know, I think he was in a difficult position, if I'm honest, and I've never spoken to him since then, but it's one of those ones. It's first of all, he's an employee and he's getting paid, so he has to kind of fall in line or he loses his job. And you know, we're not talking multi-million-pound contracts where you can just kind of walk away from it like Villas Boas has done recently and kind of be like, well, I'm fine, I've got enough money. He was, you know, this was his job. So even when things were starting to get tough, he's like, well, I don't want to walk away and lose my wage. And he's also thinking, well, I don't want to piss off this, you know, fellow countryman who then can sour my reputation back in Italy. You know, that's the other thing, you got to think of it like that. So later on, we started playing really well. We had a decent squad at that time. Remember Rocco Quinn was having like one of his best seasons. And I think we were top of the league. And then I'm sure somebody's told this story. I don't know if Jazza told this before. That we had Queen of the South away one day.
Oh, I was there that day.
Right, so we've shown up at the stadium, and as the boys do, you get your papers, because again, this is before Twitter and that. So you get your papers, and we've all sat in the bus, and we've opened the papers. Back page, Rangers, Celtic, whatever. Inside page, a big spread with Landy standing there with his cap on and his tracksuit. We'll split the old firm in 2 years. And I'm like, oh no. It's like, you can't say that. You might think that. You can't say that unless you've got a guy that's got 400 million behind you. You can't turn around and say that. So we're like, this is right away on the bus down to the game. We're like, this is going to bite us in the arse eventually. We didn't think it would be as soon as that day, but I think it was 6-1 we get scudded off of them, and nobody let us forget that. I remember in the changing, I can't remember who got sent off, but I'm sure Murray Davidson ended up playing centre back that day, and just we were 3-1 down, I think, and then it might have been the red card, and it finished 6-1. And something that stuck with me for that day, not just the result and the poor performance and getting abuse off the Queen's fans, was what he said after the game was, in the wee tiny changing rooms down there, he turned around and he said, sometimes, losing 3-1 is better than losing 6-1. Like, when you're 3-1 down and a man down, he's like, just call the game done and don't concede anymore. Just get 11 men or 10 men behind the ball. Do not let them score another goal and just go away with some pride. You've lost 3-1, move on, fight another day. And I was kind of like, it's championship level football here. You're not talking about Real Madrid playing a third division team. I was like, 3-1 against 10 men. If you nick the next goal by a long ball, a flick on it, let's say it's championship football, you're right back in the game, and theirs can creep into them. So the fact that he turned down then and said they were willing to shut up shop and take a 3-1 loss and move on, I was like, you can't be saying that. You can't be saying that to your team. And what sort of level of confidence is that you've got in your players, if that's what you think? But then I think that was the wheels starting to come off, and I don't know how much longer he lasted after that game, but not terribly much longer. Another factor for us that I think people forget throughout that, not forget, but that was a major consideration for a lot of us was, see, for a long period before kind of the shit hit the fan, if you like, we weren't getting paid. So your mind, whatever job you're in, it starts to go to, well, when's our next wage coming in? It was, first of all, if your wages get missed by a month, that's fine, no problem. Especially younger people like myself, it's like, you can deal with that. And then if it's a second month, it's like, well, all right, I can just about survive this. Some of the guys with mortgages and whatnot are starting to panic real, when it's 8-9 weeks. And then by the time you hit 10-11 weeks and there's no sign of any money coming in, you're real, who cares who you're playing on Saturday, so to speak. That boys are starting to think, how am I going to pay my mortgage? How am I going to pay my rent? How am I going to put fuel in the car to get to these games and get to training? So football kind of took a back seat by then, and we were, I think it was like the fire sale, the Livi fire sale, get everybody punted out the door. There's a story of Sparky, I think it's Joe McKee and Andy Halliday getting chucked to Parma. They were trying to punt them off to Parma to sell them to make some money.
See, I thought you were part of that as well, no?
Nah, I'm afraid. Nah, no good stories like that. There's a few places in Livi they could have sold me to, but probably not at Parma, I'm afraid. But they probably tried. I'm sure they put everybody's name out there at some stage or the other to try and go. But it was just a horrible time in terms of the off-field stuff, because you also know as a professional that, well, you need to keep yourself in proper condition to play and train, so that if you end up moving on to another club, that you're in the right condition to do so. You can't be sitting there feeling sorry for yourself because things are going bad at this club and you're not getting paid and whatnot. But I just kind of, it was such a promising start to the season as well.
You said that obviously the club was taken over, but we were demoted down to the third division. Like, what was the feeling in the squad at the time about having to start again, essentially.
It was difficult because it was all new folk at boardroom level and a skeleton squad of players and a new manager, and that there wasn't any real cohesion. So it was more just as a group of the ones that had been left over, which was only a handful of us, I think, from the players, and we're kind of like, well, what choice do we have? I remember I'd signed a contract not long before, and in fact, there was 5 of us. I know Keegs was one, and in fact, it was only maybe 4 of us, but we'd signed this bumper contract because things were meant to be getting better, and we were quite happy with that. You know, and for us, that was probably the biggest one we'd have been on. I think because they thought we might have stayed in the first division or whatnot, and then, like, no more longer than the ink had dried, like a couple of weeks later, one of the directors pulled us in and sat us down in the den and said, "See that contract you just signed? I need you to take half of it." You know, and you're sitting there like, I've just burst my balls going through the toughest year probably that a player will experience. Of not getting paid, we worked hard to get to a point where you're, happy, and then to be and they said, well, we need players to win the league to get back up. You need a club to play for and all the rest of it. And it's like, what do you do? Take your chances and rip the deal up and go and try and find a deal somewhere else. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was quite late on in the summer, and as always is the case, clubs have, they've got their number 1, number 2 in each position. They've spent a lot of their budget, so. Yeah, not saying we didn't have any choice, but the sensible decision was just to muck in for the club's sake. And like I say, you did know as well that we were staying full time and that there was a chance at the end of the year that you should win a league. So you're like, oh, okay, that's you're taking half of what you were supposed to be getting, but at the end of it, you should have a trophy. So,
see, in terms of yourself that season, you played like a wee bit more regularly, and you talked before about being like, sort of styling yourself in an old school sort of defender. Was it more enjoyable having like battles with these sort of bigger strikers that were just wanting to get into your face and stuff like that? Did you enjoy that more than sort of like the first division where the teams were more full time and probably a wee bit more technical?
No, really. It's a great question. That is a great question. But in my younger days, I enjoyed the battle side of it more. That kind of goes on to a bigger point about me as a player, talking about coming through in Lochilphead, playing boys club at an okay level in Glasgow, but I was only training with them. In fact, some weeks I wasn't even training with them. I was training with the amateur teams down here. So I'm 13, 14, training with the men down here on that Blaze Park that, believe it or not, had in the winter time had one floodlight in the corner. So you would train on like pretty much a quarter of a pitch. And when you played the game, right, you played a wee 7-a-side, 8-a-side across the park, you'd be shooting into darkness half the time because only a quarter of this pitch is lit up. and these guys don't want a wee uppity guy coming and training with them. So they just smashed you about. But again, they were doing that. That's fun. It's an amateur team. They're just there to be, have fun after their work, kick the ball around.
Yeah.
So I think for me, I was brought up as an old school centre back purely because I wasn't taught anything else. Taught just to be rough, ready, defend. Defend. And I wouldn't say it's a regret, but it was Lee Makel that was at Livi when I'd broke into my debut. I think that team he listed off in the Morton game, I'm fairly certain he was in centre mid.
Yeah, he was actually. Aye.
He was ahead of me, and Curtis Fleming had told me before the game, as I would probably in his shoes tell a young centre back going in, if you need to smash it into Rosie, just smash it into Rosie. Like, get rid of it. Don't worry about looking like Cruyff for that. And I'm like, okay. And but Makel every time during that game was just wanting the ball from me to feet. And I don't think I gave him it once. Every time he was amazing at getting into space. And I don't think I passed him the ball. I think every time I had it, I was clearing it. But I'm in my head, I'm thinking, I'm doing the right thing here. And it wasn't until he pulled me aside, and then Fleming after that, for weeks and weeks after that, and said, you can help us in possession. And it's almost like a light bulb moment, kind of, as a young player. And you're like, oh, there's more to defending than defending. But again, I had not had anybody above me kind of to teach me that until that point. So that's quite late on, if you think 17, 16, getting taught that aspect of the game. So as I started playing more and more and more, I enjoyed that side of the game far more. When I get put in at fullback, I absolutely loved it because I was able to get on the ball and play it a bit more comfortable, find your midfielders, go on and link up. And I thoroughly enjoyed that. And that's what the thing I say. So I wish I'd learned that at 13, at 14, at 12, that type of age, was taught you should be a really good passer of the ball. This is how you find midfielders. This is how you play that type of pass. This is how you get the ball. And, the idea of a defender, rather than squeezing the game when you go forward, but dropping deeper so that you can come out and play out the other side. I mean, that would have been completely alien to me at those ages. It was your teams get the ball, you squeeze it. And to most amateur players, to be fair, that aren't really well trained either, that's the same thing. The ball goes up the park, you squeeze up the park, So I going back to your main point about the battles. Early on, loved the battles. Later on, hated them. I just wanted to play football. And I said, if you beat us... I remember coming back to play Livi. My first game back at Almaville, which was really strange, was the second game of the season, I think, for Airdrie. I can't remember. We'd won our first one. I think we beat Dumbarton, and then we came to Almaville, and we were supposedly cannon fodder that season, and we were expected to get pumped. And I think I remember looking, we were like 8-1 or something, and we came and we won 2-0. I don't know if you were at that game, but you said like Mark McNulty and whatnot up top.
Yeah.
And it was a complete battle of tactics versus physical. It was us. We sat as a 4-5-1 behind the ball. We had me and I think it was David Lilly that was playing, Sean Lynch and a couple of others, and we just sat back in a 4-5-1, frustrated the life out of Livi. Sparky and that, not Lee Griffiths, Sparky, Mark McNulty, Skuggo, they couldn't get Tony Andrew. None of them could get a yard of space, and we won that 2-0, and I loved that. That was the type of game at that stage I used to enjoy. Prior to that, I remember getting called up for a reserve game at 16 in the stadium against Wraith, and big Armandoni was playing. I remember getting told we were playing Wraith during the day, and that he would have been playing, and I looked him up, and he was in the first team, but I think he'd had an injury and was coming back. I looked and I was like, holy moly. And I was like, but I was buzzing to battle against him and fight against him, and what a great guy he is. He's an absolute top guy as well. It's
amazing.
My second game or third game after that Morton game, the debut, the boy Antoine Courier for Dundee.
Yeah.
I was like, come on, I'm going to like grapple with you for 90 minutes. Like, the dirty side of it, I'm like, there's no VAR. I was like, I'm going to be nipping you, stepping in your Achilles. I'm going to be doing everything I can to piss you off for 90 minutes and know that you score. And I think there's a match gallery, and like every second picture, it's like a guy playing a pass, me fighting with him. I've got my arms around his neck, and then like him throwing me, and then the next picture is like somebody crossing the ball. Next picture, me standing on his knee or something, like just like the horrible side of the game, But I was loving that back then. But like I say, as the years went by, I was like, okay, got to be a bit more cultured in how you play.
So, I mean, that sort of third division season, Gary Bowling came in as manager. We had a story last week from Barry Wilson about him threatening to batter a bouncer in a donkey jacket. What was Bowling like? So when he was a player, I remember him just being a fucking lunatic, like just flying in, clearly didn't care. What was he like as a manager, and especially for you as a defender? Like, what was he like to work with? Gary
Bowling was good. I liked him. No issues with his style management and that. He was a very passionate guy. The coaching was good. Like I said, not on that side of things, not at all a problem. Scotty Patterson was great as well. He was close with the players as you want the assistant to be, Fun guy to be around, good player and good coach as well. I remember we played up at Forfar, and I think we were getting beat at half time or something. You know, and we were walking in the tunnel, and you know, it's like, you know, the fans are like overhanging the tunnel bit there. And there's old guys and that spitting on you, not like deliberately, but they're just shouting that loud that they're spraying all over you. And the changing rooms there, old school with they've got like the big bathing tubs, you know, like the big tiled baths that are into the changing room. And I just remember him going off the head at us, like mental. We're all sitting in silence. And he went to kick a bin, a plastic bin. And he put his foot right through it. And it got stuck. So we're looking at each other like, should we be laughing at us? And we start to snigger. And Scotty Patterson, he starts laughing. And Bobo's he's bright red, and he's bald. He's bright red, shaking his leg with this bin attached to it, trying to get it off. And we're getting beat off 4-4 in the third division, and we're howling in the background. You know, he couldn't recover from that. He got that off, and then it was like, right, let's go and turn this around. But just picturing this big red guy shaking his left leg like a dog with this bin attached to it. Everyone else howling round about him. I think I've got a funny story from that time as well with him. And you talked about how he was a no-nonsense type guy and that. We went to Belfast for a pre-season camp, and the final night we're allowed, obviously, the night out is, you know, your pre-season trip, your night to kind of build relationships and whatnot. So we were staying in this hotel. I think we had a curfew. In fact, I'm fairly certain we had some form of curfew. And we'd get punted out the pubs or something because, you know, just because of a big group of guys. And we're back drinking in the hotel, and it was quite loud, and the hotel were a bit annoyed and whatnot. And I remember Bobby Barr, I think he got the key from the reception. I'm not sure. Somebody let him in to Bobo's room, and he took all his stuff, took the gaffer's stuff out of the room and moved it. I don't think he did anything too severe with it. He moved it down the hall or something, or out to another room. But, you know, you can't go in touching the manager's stuff. So Bobo got wind of this, and like, you know, a red flag to a bull, because I think he did a couple of pints as well. So we're all laughing, and Bobby is shiting himself, like thinking, what's Bobo, you know, the size difference between the two of them as well. And I remember he burst into Bobby's room eventually. I think Bobby was in the room, and like the door was locked, and like I think Bobo would have put his shoulder through it, and eventually it gets unlocked and he comes in. We're all there watching, and we're 2 floors up on the middle of Belfast, like right down on the main street. And Bobo takes Bobby's stuff, his belongings, opens the window, and starts at whatever time in the morning this is, and starts chucking Bobby's stuff out the window onto the ground. Like chargers, clothes, backpacks, like you name it. I think bedding out the door. So eventually everything settles down, right? And you know, everyone's calm. And at reception there was these 2 couches sitting facing one another, and in the background was the elevator. And the manager's calmed down, everyone's calmed down. It's now about 4 o'clock or something, and we're getting a ferry back to Scotland in like 4 hours' time. And I remember, I think the manager was like over on the far side, and there was like 4 or 5 of us just sitting, like thinking what a night that was, on the couches. And the next thing you know, nobody's pressed the button, but the lift dings, and it was like 4 o'clock in the morning. The doors open, and here's big Mick O'Byrne with 2 mattresses stood vertical in the lift, and Mick, like upside down, passed out, going up and down in this lift. No having a clue. The doors are just shut and the lift's going up and going down. And he's out the game. And of course we're howling, and the reception staff are looking around like, get the fuck out of this hotel. Like, they're like, you just need to leave this place. And they're looking, and we've seen that we were checking out that morning, and they're like, you can just picture what they were thinking at that time. But it was the way everything had calmed down. Everyone was relaxed, and then these doors just ping open, and here's this 6'4" centre half upside down on a mattress in the lift. It's going up and down. We're like, oh no! So,
that's amazing.
It was a good trip. That it was a funny trip.
Now, when we announced you, it sort of went mad on the GS group chat. So, what can you tell us about sort of how did you get involved in all that, and then tell us about any good nights out that you had with the GS boys? I
think it started because when I moved to Livi, obviously when I was signed full time at 16, and I didn't really know I never went to school in that area. I didn't know anybody apart from my teammates, and the majority of the squad was made up of Edinburgh boys and Glasgow boys. So it was only really Keegs that was from Livi. So I was used to hanging about with him, and he had the triplet brothers that were playing as well. And he had gone to school with a lot of the GS boys. So I think I'd ran into them like a few times and maybe nights out, and not quite sure how it all began with them. But more and more, I was like became friends with likes of Dave Black and Tom Cheeseman, Mutter and Steve Lyon and that whole group of boys. And it was good. I felt it was great because not being from that area, I was playing and training with Keegs every day and got on great with him. But I was like, you're not in a relationship with someone like that, so you can't be with them all the time. And if you're not with them, you're kind of like, what did you do? So I was going out with them, hanging out with the boys. We'd watch football. They were Livi fans, obviously, but they were football fans. So like Super Sundays, whatnot, and that was good crack. And obviously they played in the supporters team. So I was like, well, if I'm not playing like on a given day and they've got a game, go along and watch them, because at the end of the day you weren't really doing anything else. So I got on great with them, but some tremendous nights out with them as well. Some probably not, most probably not suitable for this. The other big factor the nights out was I had a flat, obviously, through on my own, whereas the majority of them were still living with parents at that stage. Most of them were. They were all treated like wee babies. So having a flat where there's no parents about was a major bonus in that regard. So I mean I think it was World Cup 2010 was that South Africa? Where was that?
Yes, Vuvuzela, yeah.
Because I think Tom was off his head, bought Vuvuzelas, or somebody did, in the flat. And I think it was a summer, we weren't training. I was going to the gym, and I think I was doing a little bit of coaching as well, but you were watching every World Cup game pretty much. So the flat just had a kind of revolving door for them. They were in their summer as well. Most of them were at uni and whatnot, so maybe some of them were working part-time, but that was really good. And obviously all the Livi functions were quite good as well, because I'd be there as a player, they'd be there as fans, and then the boys that were there as players from Glasgow and Edinburgh would end up disappearing probably. They would do their minimal, what they had to, and then they'd be away, and I'd be out with them for the rest of the night. So I saved those stories. Those stories are not Livi related, they're Livi related.
As a guy who's not from Livingston, right? Club Earth or GC, what do you prefer?
Do you know, I was a Da Vinci's man, you know that?
Hey.
No way.
I remember.
Jeez, no.
I remember. Here's a decent one for you. I know my dad's going to listen to this podcast as well. I remember when they revamped that. What did they call it? I can't remember what they called it.
Deluxe.
Deluxe. That was it. Obviously, having frequented that place quite often, you got on well with the people owning it and that.
Yeah.
And I remember somebody came in, one of the club directors or something had come in and said, there's a new club in town or something's like revamped itself, and they're wanting to give you like a booth on opening night. And everybody, none of the players in the team were like, I'm staying in Livi for a night out for this place. And I was like, all right. So I never said anything. But then afterwards, I said, did anybody say about that booth? Is anyone going there? Anyone? Not right. So I messaged the boys and I was like, and I went up to the director and I said, I'll take that booth. I'll a few of my mates will go. And he's like, right, fine, no problem. And I was like, I think they play for the supporters team anyway. So I was like, it's Livi related. And he's like, that's fine. He's like, I don't care. I've got these things. Just I'll put your name against it. So of course they're expecting Livingston Football Club to rock up this Saturday night on their revamped opening night, and like Mutter and Steve and like wee Paul and all of us show up, and they're looking like that's not a football team. And I'm like, all right. And I think if you remember, it was all white. Everything was white.
So, yeah.
Opening night, everything's white. They've put us in one of the best looking booths in the place. And after about 15 minutes, I've taken a bottle of champagne, opened it, and sprayed it everywhere in the booth. This champagne has just stained the white ceilings, the white walls, the white booth. First night of the place. And it's just been ruined completely. I was like, oh no, what a disaster. They never, to this day, did they ever make a fuss about it. They never cared. Never cared. They'd probably just get another coat of paint, to be fair. But it was the way of their face when this booth was reserved for Livingston FC. And this, like, you could not have put a group of guys together that looked less like a football team. I've walked in to sit there and start drinking. So,
it's class.
Right, this is another story altogether regarding the flat. So, I'm sure it was the Italians that had this, that done this. I've come home from training one day, and obviously it's a club flat, right? But most of the time it was just me in it. Occasionally there was guys that would stay over if we had another session, or if there was guys like, remember Big Mark Tinkler from down south. He would kip for a couple of nights a week, but again, he was just a great big guy, and I learned quite a lot from him as a centre back. But just a big quiet guy, but he would stay in the flat for a couple of nights. But it'd been a few months at least, and there'd been nobody else in with me. And I've come home from training, and I've walked in, and there's these three boys sitting on the couch, and I've tried to speak to them, and they've got like Nigerian tops on, like with a badge, and they're sitting there, and I'm like, hello, like, you're in my house? And they've no spoke, and they can't speak English, and they don't think they understand it very well. They're smiling, so they don't look like they're going to kill me, but I can't get any word out of them, and I'm like, this can't be right. And I'm like, right, they must be. Straight away I'm like, trialists. They've got to be trialists. So I phoned the club, and I was like, I've just come home from training, and there's three guys on my couch. And they're like, oh, aye, right, they're agents, and we've just dropped them off. They've just arrived from whatever country they were coming from. Like, I think they're trying to fob themselves off and said they'd been like at AC Milan or something, like youth players or something. And they're like, the agent's staying in a hotel or something, in wherever in Edinburgh, but they're going to stay for a few days and train. And I'm like, that's fine. Honestly, I didn't need a heads up about that. Just do as you please. This was usually the way. And I was like to him, I said, you realise you don't speak English? And he's like, oh, all right. And he's like, I was hoping you wouldn't mind taking them to get some like food shopping. And I said, right, I was like, okay, genuine at this point, like no problem. He says, come down and see me and then take them to Lidl. So I've driven down, seen the chief executive, he's given me money to take these guys food shopping. So I'm walking around Lidl next to the stadium with these three guys that don't speak English, pointing at items in the shop, doing like the thumbs up, thumbs down game, aye. And they're giving me like the no signal, like And every bit of food, I'm like, what do these guys eat? Like, have they never seen a supermarket? Because every bit of anything they were just saying no to. Got to pasta, and they were like, yes, thumbs up to pasta. I was like, thank God, something. So bought this ton of pasta, and I'm like, right, okay, went back to the flat with them. They've no spoke to me, like nothing. I'm sitting there, I can't remember, I was watching telly or doing something in my room, and I'm like, I'm starving, so I've got to make myself dinner. And I'm looking at them, I'm like, try to make the have you eaten gesture, like, you haven't done anything since I've been here. It's been about 7 hours I've known yous, and I've not seen you put any food to your mouth. So, and they're like, nodding their head like they're hungry. So I'm like, I've tried to show them into the kitchen of this flat, got the pasta out, cooked pasta in front of them slowly so they can watch how it's done. Made the pasta, they've sat and eat it off the plates. I'm like, right, great. So next day, I've come home for training with them. They were hopeless, and I've gone away out for the afternoon, and I've come back into the house, and I walk in, and I'm like, what is that smell? I'm like, it smells like the place has been on fire. I'm like, what is going on? And they're not in the living room, they're in the room that they were sharing. Now, this is a 3-bedroom flat, and there was 3 of them, but they all slept in the same room, right? On this, like, don't ask me how it worked. And I've gone into the kitchen, and I've turned the corner, and all in front of me is like 5 pots. The only 5 pots that were in that flat. And they've tried to cook pasta, and they've obviously not put enough water in and left it on too high a heat. And they've just melted this dried pasta pretty much. And like, the pots are black, burnt, no comeback for that. Every pot. And I'm like, this can't be real. They've obviously thought, maybe they've started one and they're like, we'll be able to do the next one, we'll be able to do the next one. Nope. They've ruined it, and they've thought, what can we do? Well, we can't go anywhere. So they've gone into their room, I'm like, what is going on? So I think I phoned Devin Jacobs, it was. And I was like, you need to come and see this. So he's come down and he's laughing and he's like, what is going on? So I said, nobody's going to believe me when I tell this story in years to come, like now. So I says, Dev, here's what we need to do. Let's get a picture with him. So I've said, you sit on the couch. Dev's like, what are you talking about? So I've got Devin to sit next to him on the couch. And I've taken a picture on my phone. And I think he's like, you need to do one. So I've sat next to him and Dev's taking a picture. I'm like, I said, Dev, nobody is ever going to believe this, that 3 Nigerian boys who don't speak English roomed with me for 3 days and burnt all my pots, ruined all my pots, and still never spoke to me. I think the very next day, they trained with us, and again, they were absolutely hopeless. So whatever sort of CV they'd been set, the club had been sent, was fabricated, and away they went, never to be seen or heard from ever again. Like just another wacky couple of days in the period that was Livingston Football Club at that time. So.
Right, so we'll finish up by getting your dream Livy 5-a-side.
I thought that was going to be really easy. See, when Povey said that's what he's asking everyone, I was like, that'll be really easy. But the more I thought about who had actually played alongside, the more I was like, this is quite difficult. I think I'd put Snodgrass in there. Definitely, he has to be up there. I've said I'd put Lee Griffiths in, purely on his finishing ability. The guy's just ridiculous. We played a under-19s game against Stirling Albion one time on the Astro at Livi, and Stirling rocked up with, we were battering teams 8-9-0 every week, and they rocked up with a really poor team for that standard. And it takes a lot for a manager to come over and say to the other manager, listen, don't take this seriously today, or it could be 24-25-0. And so we I can't remember if it was Graham Robertson turned around or somebody turned around and said to us that basically, this is going to be pointless as a game, so let's treat it as training, play 2-touch, keep the ball, keep possession as long as you can, basically. Don't go and batter them right away. So what happens, someone took kick-off to Griffiths and he shot from the halfway line and scored. 3 seconds into the game, we've been told to keep possession and not score, and 3 seconds into this game he shot from the halfway line and scored. And I was just like, tell the guy that the sky is blue and he'll tell you it's green. Just he ain't winning with them. So, but again, he can finish. I mean, the goals that he scored in his professional career are nothing on what he scores in training. Just that's just born with that unbelievable ability to score goals. I would probably it was a tough one between Dorans and this guy, but I would probably put Joe Hamill in.
Oh,
Joe
really?
Hamill, aye. What a player. So good on the ball, what a left foot, just composed, nice guy as well. But I mean, he was very underrated. I think, again, if he really screwed the nut, I mean, he was down at Leicester, I think, as well, which shows you that he was a quality player, but it's just one of them that if he, a few more breaks and a right place, right time situation, and he would have gone on and even achieved more than what he did. He was superb. Next up, I would probably have to go for, like I said, Lee Makel. Guy's just oozes class. What a player. Again, I was unfortunate that he was kind of he was past his peak when I was just breaking through, and that I was a young boy, he was just finishing up. But even then, you could just see that guy. You can see how he played in the Prem and that. No bother at all to him. Every side of a midfielder's job he could do really, really well. So I just wish that I'd seen him I was able to play in the same team as him at his prime. It would have been incredible. So I better pick a keeper, and I would put in. We've talked about him, Roddy McKenzie. Again, what a goalie! Ability, unbelievable, and professional as well. He just gets on with things. It was, there's certain times as a defender, no matter whether you're playing youth, amateur, professional, whatever, as a centre half, you feel comfortable knowing that there's a guy behind you that if you mess up, you think there's a good chance that they've still got a lot to do. And it's a rare feeling because quite a lot of the time you'll be thinking, if they get through here, there's a good chance they're scoring. With Roddy, just because of how many times he pulled you out a hole or how good he was in training, you just knew that, well, I've got a safety net back here that there's a good chance that he'll pull something, out there to save us here. So, many's that. Is that Snoddy, Griff, Hamill, Roddy McKenzie, Mako. Yeah. So,
that's 5.
I mean, I could have gone and on about other guys, but Jason
honourable mentions in.
Jason Kennedy was severely underrated in the middle of the park. Good player.
I really rated him, actually. I thought he was brilliant.
Really good player. Dave Mackay. Dave's probably been overlooked by me just now because of how reliable he was. Just Mr. Reliable in there. He wasn't flashy, but what a career he's had from being such a good defender. And anybody that talks to you about Dave Mackay talks highly about him. Centre backs as well that I learned from, likes of Chris Innes, was superb. Stephen Tweed was massive for me. I was his boot boy, and he was great. I didn't get to play alongside him that much, but he gave you plenty of advice, and he took time out. I think he's been in Germany, he's been in Japan, he's been kind of all over, and he took time out to help you out. So anyway, like I say, there's too many to keep going on about, but I feel very fortunate to have played with who I have managed to play with when I was at Livi. So.
It's that time again, baby. Time for some more juicy memories against those media darlings and all-round absolute bellends St Mirren. Thomas, why don't you start us off?
So I'm going to take us back to the promotion season. The 17th of February 2018, we beat St Mirren 4-1 in our unbelievable performance. One of my favourite games of that season, out with the playoff games. It started pretty badly. I remember this. They looked really sharp. They looked sharp all season, to be fair. They were playing really good football, moving the ball around well. And under Jack Ross as well, who, he did a really good job there that season. So we were 1-0 down after 2 minutes, and, I was kind of fearing the worst. But then a Ryan Hardy double, a Lee Miller overhead kick, which was a thing of beauty. I think Lee and we looked at each other in absolute disbelief. We didn't really understand what was going on there.
I'm sure we both just burst out laughing. I don't even think we cheered the goal. We just laughed at each other.
It was so good. And then, all culminated with a magnificent dink from Robbo from a tight angle to finish the game off. And it was just a bit surreal because they were so good that season. I won't take anything away from them. They were very good. But that day, it really... I think for me, it was kind of when I started to believe that we could go up because we could beat anyone. We could beat anyone in our league. The Premier Partick were pish. So, what a day. Very, very good game.
I think from what I remember of that day, it was like the first time, even though we signed them in the January, it was the first time we properly seen what Miller and Hardy could do together. And it was just that raised the bar so high. And obviously, Danny Mullen before, because I think he played for St Mirren that day.
Yeah, he did, I think.
Danny Mullen that season was alright, but then when we brought in Miller and Hardy in that game in particular, it was just brilliant. Povey, have you got anything about that game?
It was just that, as you say, one of the best games that season, and there's a hell of a lot of great games that season as well. It was a massive St Mirren crowd because obviously they were flying, so it was nice to get right up on them. And I tell you what though, see, looking back at that game, I don't think that we've changed when we play at our best just now. I don't think we've changed our style of play that much. The type of goals we scored are sort of epitomises what we've been like since our time in the Premiership when we've been playing really well anyway. And I know that long ball up for Hardy's first goal was hilarious because their keeper totally chucked it or something, and Hardy had a tap in. But that reminds me of the type of balls we try to play to Robbo, So it's quite amazing to think that was our style of play back then, and we're still using it.
Yeah. Another interesting thing I've found is I mean, we can leave this out if this is wrong. So Mullen did play, but he replaced Gavin Riley in the 58th minute and came on the park. So a former Livi star and a future Arminville podcast sponsored Livi star.
Jake, what is your moments or memories against St Midden?
I mean, obviously, it's quite easy to just say, talk about the semi-final and stuff like that, which I won't. But I will say, it will make such an interesting game at the weekend compared to that. If the occasion was different and the form had been in whatever. But I'm just going to mention back to 2018 when we beat them 2-0 away, and Alan Lithgow scored. And if you remember, that was the game after when Kenny Miller completely scrapped him, which was really mental at the side after how well we played. Anyway, scrapped him, and then he came back, first game back, and then he scored, which is class. So wish all the best, Alan Lithgow. I don't know if he'll ever be back in the team, to be honest. Bless him. But good on you, mate. But that's about just a short and sweet for me.
Owen, what is your memories against St Mirren?
I'm going to talk about the same game as Jake. The 25th of August in 2018. It was obviously it was right at the beginning of the season. Kenny Miller had just been sacked or left or whatever that was. And it was Gary Holt's first game as manager. And obviously reinstated Alan Lithgow, who was on the score sheet that day. But also on the score sheet was a first start and first Premier League goal for Jack Hamilton, who, as we all know as Livingston fans, is just he just seems to be scoring goals no matter where he's at. Obviously, scored one or two for us already this season. Got one last season, and then obviously in that season as well. Jack Hamilton, I think he's definitely the future at Livingston, and if we do not sign him up on a 5-year contract, I'd be bitterly disappointed. I don't want to lose him to some, absolute riddies like Morton or something like that. But yeah, I just mind it just came to him, and he just basically just passed it into the back of the net. So Jack Hamilton, from going and playing in Pennycook to and then up to League 2 with Berwick Rangers, if I remember rightly, up to League 1, up to the Championship. He's been absolutely everywhere, scored goals everywhere, and even proved that he can score goals for Livingston. I think he's going to be a bright star. So, but yeah, my memory of St Mirren was his first Premier League goal for us in that game in August 2018.
I forgot that Jack Hamilton actually played that day. It was also a first appearance for Steve Lawson, who was hooked at half time because he genuinely looked like he'd never played football before.
That's right. I think Keegs came on from, didn't he?
But that was a good game. I remember it was scorching start of the season, new era. Kenny Miller was away. So David Hopkins took over. I'm trying to remember who scored. I think Liam Buchanan got 2. Ben Gordon played.
Was that the game of Gary Glenn?
And Gary Glenn. Gary Glenn scored a free kick from about 75 yards out. Showed one piece of quality in his 2 or 3 years at Livingston. But it was a great game because I think St Mirren were sort of around about us in the table at that time. I think we went above them. And I thought, oh shit, this David Hopkins guy is the real deal. It was also a first appearance for Matthew Knox, who became our youngest ever player. So he came on, hit a free kick. I think he hit the post or something. And we were like, oh yeah, this guy's going to be class. And then obviously everything transpired. We started signing mad players under Hopkins, got relegated, and then lo and behold, we're back where we belong. But that first game under Hopkins was class. Considering the team, the players that we had, and I think St Mirren had a decent enough team. They had Stevie Mallon, Lewis Morgan, Stephen Thompson, Jim Goodwin was playing for them. That was a good game. I enjoyed that one. And finally, Povey, what is your memory against St Mirren?
Well, I was thinking back, and I'm like, always regret not going to Love Street. Not that we played there that often, and I've only been to the new stadium the once, and that was same season as that 4-1 win. It was in the April, end of the season, when St Mirren won the league against us, annoyingly. It was 0-0, and to be fair, it was a good atmosphere, and bless the St Mirren fans, they were buzzing. So apart from that, that's the only time for some reason that I've been there. And I remember it was about this time last year we played St Mirren at home midweek, and that just kind of came to me there actually. And I tried to get to it, but there was a car crash and I couldn't get across. So, and it was on Alba at night though, so I did watch it. That was when Lawless scored a penalty and Dykes put us 2-0 up, and then it finished 2-1. I don't know if you remember that. But
Keegan Jacobs played an amazing ball through for Dykes' second.
That was it.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
Actually, that was we were on a great run for ages. About then, I think we got beat off Ross County just before it, right enough. But apart from that, was a wee blip, and then that was. We were on our way to finishing in a European spot. I would have thought, honestly, the way it was going. Owen.
Yeah, it was annoying that obviously it worked out for us. Don't want to get into a debate about it because we don't want Hearts fans fucking greeting us. Like, it was good that the season was finished because we meant that we got our second highest ever finish ever. But the way that Aberdeen and Motherwell fucking finished third that year, they were pish. They were so bad. So I think I agree with you. I think we probably would have finished fourth if we'd managed to keep going.
Well, wasn't that an absolute delight? Why not jump over to our social media? Twitter and Instagram are at AlmondViewPod. Facebook and YouTube, just search for Almond View Podcast, and make sure to follow us on wherever you get your podcasts to keep up to date with new episodes. Thank you very much for listening. Forza Livi. Hope to see you all next week. I feel like you're inside me.